Welcome everybody. It is another series of the Deep Dive with Altum. It's our monthly webinar series where we tackle the critical topics shaping healthcare finance today. As you know, each month we're joined by experts that help us make sense of obstacles and opportunities in this industry. And whether you're navigating complex changes, to stay ahead of the rapidly evolving field, that is exactly what the Deep Dive is here for. I am Matthew Alford. I'm the Chief Development Officer of Altum. And today we have Bill Eikost, a legend in our midst, the co-host. Super excited. I said that I was only going to do one job when I was introducing him here, is you have to do it right. Anybody that knows Bill knows the shades are coming out.
I appreciate that. I did not come prepared today. I apologize.
You didn't. I'm picking up for you. I had to do you justice, Bill. So, Bill Eikost is the Senior Business Development Executive with Nemadji. Bill has about 35 years of experience helping hospitals improve cash flow, accelerate collections. Bill is a fellow with HFMA and a past president of the Georgia chapter, and has dedicated all of his career into supporting healthcare financial professionals. In his current role, he helps hospitals recover lost revenue through eligibility detection and a proprietary data mining technology that identifies insurance coverage on aged accounts. And I'm going to let him talk a little bit more about his role as we get on this. But beyond his professional achievements, beyond his dance floor prowess, Bill also he lives just a little bit north of Atlanta with his wife Jan, and they've been married for, he's going to correct me, I'm going to say it right, 36 years this year.
This year will be 37. Yeah,
37. I'm sorry, and he has two sons, Zach and Avery, and is now a grandfather to his granddaughter Ivy. So, man, we're excited about what's going on today. We're going to kind of discuss some industry trends in the importance of building relationships and partnerships. I don't think we could have found a better person to kind of cover this topic with. But, Bill, let me turn it over to you for a minute. I will release the shades here. Can you just kind of give us a background, tell us exactly what you do with Nemadji, and introduce yourself to the crowd today?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Matt. It's a pleasure to be with you. And I see some of your loyal followers are on today, and I appreciate them making time for us. But yeah, I became a member of HFMA in 1989. Elizabeth and I have joked, she used to come to a lot of meetings with her dad. And I think the first meeting she came to was the year that I joined HFMA. And we've got a few years between us, but it's just been a long, long time. And I've now been with Nemadji coming up on 12 years, which in my 36-year career in healthcare is the longest that I've been anywhere. I just, on a personal note, I need to back up very quickly and say that Jan and I are also happy to have two wonderful daughter-in-laws. In addition to our wonderful sons, we have two wonderful daughter-in-laws, Lakin and Kat, that are very special to us. I want to make sure I acknowledge them. But with Nemadji, since the start, I've just been trying to carry the banner for Nemadji and help get the word out about the great work that we do. I'm trying to find incremental revenue for hospitals, and we work on a contingency fee model, and we've had good success with the hospitals that we are working with. And I've just tried to build those relationships over time where, hey, somebody might not be ready to do business with us today, but there might come a time in the future that they need our help. So I want to make sure that I'm nurturing those relationships while at the same time taking care of the folks that we are doing business with. So it's a great organization. They've been very supportive of me, allowing me to continue my involvement in HFMA and travel around a little bit. I'm not getting to as many HFMA meetings nationwide as I used to. I think you have to be a little bit strategic about that, but I certainly am continuing to stay invested in the Southeast in particular and up into the Mid-Atlantic, and just continue to meet and enjoy the relationship with some great people.
Well, while we're on that topic, let's stay there for a second as far as HFMA goes. And I know a lot of people on here are involved in HFMA, but for those that are not, can you just kind of give us a little bit of, I guess your past with the chapter, especially the Georgia chapter, and then kind of just talk about bringing it up to where it is today, and then also where you kind of see the future going with HFMA and the benefits, not just from a vendor side of it, but from a provider side of it, from the continuing education, from the relationships. Just kind of give us Bill's, global view of the benefits of the organization.
Yeah, for sure. For me, I would say first and foremost, when I got into the industry, I had no prior experience in the industry. And so I was really coming in pretty green, and I knew there was a lot that I needed to learn. And so I quickly adopted the perspective or the attitude of I want to be a student of the industry. Knowing that I started on the vendor side and have continued on the vendor or business partner side, it's real easy to sort of stay in your lane and only focus on the things that maybe your company provides. But for me, that wasn't enough. I wanted to make sure that I had a better sense of what happens throughout the whole revenue cycle continuum. And, I got my certification. I'm a CHFP. I just felt like it was important after a number of years to say, hey, I'm talking about this stuff. Let me see if I really get it and really understand it. So from an association perspective, first and foremost, I find it hard to believe that anybody's in healthcare financial management without having HFMA as part of their professional development toolkit. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go to every meeting that's out there, but it makes resources available that are certainly going to help you and enhance your career, and both personally and professionally, with all the relationships certainly that come from it. I started volunteering at a very early stage with HFMA. It's just my personality to I'm a people person, and to be engaged, and so was doing a lot of things. And people joke around and say if you hang around long enough, they'll put you in charge. Well, I got rolled into, I served a board term, and then I got rolled into the officer rotation, and just it was a wonderful opportunity to um, support an association and lead an association, a chapter. I had a theme during my year, we've got your back, and I really felt like HFMA, and still do, HFMA is a resource that has providers' backs with some of the challenges that they face, and I have had a wonderful opportunity to not only lead the chapter, but help new leaders, younger leaders, the next generation of leaders. It'd be real easy to sort of blend into the background, but it's been important for me to stay engaged. I love seeing some of the new folks that are getting involved in the energy and the ideas that they're bringing, and they've been exceptional. I think HFMA is alive and well. The association has a membership larger than they've ever had. That doesn't mean the formula for success today is the same as it was 15 or 20 years ago. They've had to adjust that, and they've had to make some changes. I think there's a growing pressure on providers, to invest their time. There's so much pulling them in different directions that it's sometimes hard to maybe engage with HFMA as much as you want. But at the very least, the community that it provides within our industry is so invaluable. And I just can't emphasize enough the importance of, knowing who some of your peers are. I know Samantha's on the call, and I know, for example, on a regular basis, she gets together with some of her peers up there in South Carolina, for dinner, just to talk about, they hopefully talk about some personal things too, but they talk about industry and what's going on in the shop and how they're addressing different issues. And I think that collaboration is so valuable, and important. So I just can't emphasize enough. I mean, you've got to decide where you can plug in, when you can plug in. And, there might be times of the year that are busier for you than others. And, you just have to decide that, but don't miss the opportunity to plug in, get engaged, and then make the effort to really get to know people, because there's some wonderful folks in this industry that have helped me so much over the years.
Yeah, and I think just personally, Bill has been one of those that I remember my very first HFMA meeting, and you walk into a room of hundreds of people, and when you don't know a single soul, right? And Bill was one of the first people to come over, shake my hand, introduce himself, and ask me to dinner with the group that he was going with. And you've always been one of those leaders of inclusivity, and making people feel comfortable, making sure that you're kind of looking out for other people that in your profession. And one of the things that we talked about in our prep call on this, and so I'm kind of going to skip ahead a little bit on our format. But what do you attribute your longevity? Like we said in the intro, you've got 35 years in this industry. What would you attribute your longevity and your success to being, aside from being with companies that offer great services? A lot of that is almost secondary to your people skills and relationship building. So, I mean, if you could kind of take a reflective view back on this, what do you think? Hey, this is what I did where I found success with it, and kind of share that with everybody.
Yeah, sure. And my dad was in healthcare for 30 years up in Ohio, and so I joke and say that in some respects, healthcare was in my genes. But I just, when I got into it, I started out in sort of an account management role, so I was really in a support role, representing the company I was with existing clients and helping them ensure that we were providing the service and the results that they needed. Well, then that expanded. I remember my boss saying, hey, feel free to start reaching out to some of the hospitals in the area when you're visiting our clients, and when you're at HFMA meetings. And so I got comfortable doing that to the point where I eventually transitioned into more of a business development role. It felt like it felt like a comfortable space for me. Now, when I say comfortable, I think we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So, I didn't come in pretending to be this super powered sales guy by any means. I mean, people that have known me know that I'm not that high pressure sales guy. Hey, I don't have a blue light flashing over my head saying, here's the deal I got for you today kind of thing. But I realized that. And again, I had some pretty good mentors early on in my career that I think I tried to emulate in realizing how important it was to build the relationships. I remember, Matt, when you and Samantha talked, you talked about your employees and treating your employees as people first and then employees. And I'm certainly the same way. I don't, when I met you at an HFMA meeting, I didn't know whether you worked for a hospital or whether you worked for a company, right? But it was just the fact that we were in the room together and you were a new face. And it's important to me to help people feel comfortable with around one another. We get the reputation in Georgia sometimes as being kind of cliquish, when I think the reality is many of us have known each other for so long that we just are real comfortable with each other and always hanging out. But that doesn't mean we don't have room to bring other people to the table. So I just kind of continued on my journey. I had to believe in the services that the company I was working for was providing. That was, first and foremost. Hey, they might like Bill Eikost, but that's not going to mean that they like the services that we're offering. So it was, I've mostly sold services, not products. So, it's not like, hey, when you run out, call me, we'll order you some more. It's not like that. You have to continue to build the client's trust over time. And I think that's just tapped into a lot of my strengths as a person. Now, with this many years in the industry, people could say, well, you're an old dog. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. But I'm always trying to improve upon my approach, my message, always looking at how I can do what I'm doing better. Because at the end of the day, I'm not doing this for my health. I'm doing this. I'm trying to represent Nemadji and, help Nemadji build the business. And so I need to make sure that I'm out there doing that. Knowing people is important, but that alone is not going to get you the deal. So it really has been important for me to get to know an individual. Somebody said to me the other day, if you were prospecting a new hospital for the first time, they had a new leader and whatever, how would you approach it? And I just try to break it down as much as I can by who do I know in the organization? Who do I have anything in common with the people that are leading the organization? Do I have other vendor business partner friends who perhaps do business with that organization that could help make a warm connection, a warm lead, as opposed to a cold lead? I've found myself doing that more and more in recent years, just because the market is so saturated. As I said before, it's very clear, very evident that providers are under increased pressure. They're being spread in a lot of different directions. I realize that any communication I might send to them is one of hundreds that they're getting from different people. And so I've, tried to be creative in that respect in some ways, but also realize sort of what I'm up against. They're the most important thing to me, but I might not be the most important thing to them at that particular time. And you just have to sort of feel that out. But it's a long distance run, man. It's not a sprint by any means.
No, and what's interesting, and I like what you said about, gaining access through trying to utilize some of the other existing relationships that might be with a new prospect. And I guess that also goes into my next question, and I'm happy that we have some providers on here, and if y'all want to give feedback in the chat channel, I'd love to hear it. But do you believe, because of the amount of inundation that they're getting from channel partners or vendors, that cold calling is just dead, and that trying to reach out without any type of I guess access from other people is just something that is going to die off because of the amount of inundation with it? Or I guess I'd love to hear your feedback on where you think, not only today but where it's going in the next, let's say, 5 years.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some people that still believe that's the way to approach it. Have I found it to be the most successful way for me? Um, every now and then you get a hit, but I think to a large extent that is just not the way to approach it anymore. A lot of people think it's a numbers game. You make so many attempts, you're bound to get. And I'm not. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. So yeah, I feel much more authentic, much more genuine, coming in a different way, and that might be meeting somebody for the first time at a conference. A lot of times I'll walk into the room and I'll know who the people are that I'm specifically interested in introducing myself to. They may not know me from Adam, but there again, that's where I might lean on another colleague from another company who's got a longstanding relationship with them or something. There's been a lot of movement in the industry just in this past year alone. We've had some clients that have gotten new leadership, and we've had to really do our best to connect with that new leadership to ensure that we're still in a good place and a trusted partner. I think it continues to evolve. You and I have talked about, I think sometimes the people leading the organization haven't been in the trenches carrying a bag for quite some time. And so their perspective of how the sales process works is perhaps considerably different from what they would find it really to be. You got companies out there that say, you had a great meeting with those people last month. Why can't we get this deal done this quarter? And the reality is it just doesn't always work that way, and if you're putting the pressure on me to try to make that happen sooner, I'm running the risk of alienating us from that organization from ever doing business with them. And I'm just not comfortable with that. I have to be my true authentic self. And again, I'm thankful that Nemadji allows me to do that and be myself and not force me to try to be somebody that I'm not. So I think the industry continues to change, and so that's we have to adjust to that, just like the HFMA has to adjust to the industry. And I think we're in a somewhat of maybe a conservative period right now because there's a lot of uncertainty at the federal level. Historically, when there's been a Republican administration, a Republican Senate, and a Republican House, that is not necessarily favored well for healthcare. And so in addition to that, we're seeing a lot of significant movement and reduction in resources and whatnot. But at the same time, there could be a part of that creates a tremendous windfall from funds that have been misappropriated in some way, right? And so I think providers understandably are being a little bit more conservative in what they move forward with. Now, while that's important, I don't think you can take your eye off the ball because we're moving down this track. We know what the challenges are. A lot of the challenges have been facing us for years and years and years. you can't get complacent, and you've got to be innovative. You've got to be willing to at least have conversations. Some people shut themselves off completely from outside organizations simply because they don't want to put themselves in that dynamic of sitting across from a business development person. But I think it can be such valuable time spent. So, I just encourage people to just try to keep being better and taking the initiative to look at some things that could really help their day-to-day operations.
Yeah, and just on a sidetrack, and said, yes, she confirms that cold calling is dead, which I would tend to agree with. But you said something in there which I kind of want to talk on for a second, because you said about the Republican control in three of the branches is from what you've seen over the course of your tenure. Um, do you see this as going favorably or unfavorably, or do you think it is early to tell what this current administration would be up to as far as how it affects healthcare and how it affects the financial side of healthcare?
Yeah, I know this isn't a political conversation, but I do think that it's a little bit early in the process. We ripped the Band-Aid off in many respects, right? And so I think it's just so much of it is different that that's why you're seeing some of the reactions that you are. Did some of it have to happen? Maybe so. I just don't know enough about the ins and outs, but it's been very very fast. It's been very direct. And in many respects, far-reaching. Yeah, I do think that things are going to settle down. But in our industry in healthcare, I mean, you just look historically at the things that we've had to react to. We thought we had a reprieve from the pandemic, and then last year you get something that happens in February, with Change Healthcare, and it just kind of flips a lot of organizations on their head. So as an industry, we've always had to be able to adjust and react. You can't, just because you're on top of your game this year does not guarantee that's going to continue into the next year and the year after. I mean, you just really, the old saying, everybody has a plan B until they get hit in the face, and you just can't expect that things are going to kind of continue along as is. I mean, there's always going to be something. It seems like, just because there's so many moving parts, and so many groups that are invested in the work that healthcare does, that you just always have to be ready to adjust. So I don't know to think that this is anything that's going to be long term. I'm sure we'll adjust as we need to, because the outside pressures to make the changes, will be strong.
Well, and I mean, obviously, I guess nobody has a crystal ball, and unfortunately, going back to, what you said in the, this time last year with what was happening with Change and how it rocked a lot of facilities back on their heels, and changed as far as direction, and then also planned implementations they may have had for other objectives. How that kind of put a pause on it. And one thing that you talked about earlier, and is just how much a lot of these providers have on their plate. And it's not that you can't build out a plan A, B, C, and D, but like you said, sometimes things get you just get punched in the face, you get kicked in the mouth on things that you never expected to happen. So I think, I heard you say something about it a while back, and I think it was on another podcast, and I'd love for you to share it with us, but just about, managing burnout, so like you said, you've been doing this for 35 years. I believe I'm in my 20th. So not only just for vendors, but from providers who are dealing with the stresses of, the financial viability of a hospital, on top of trying to deal with the latest trends that are coming up, anything that could be coming from an administrative, a governmental regulation standpoint, overseeing a department of employees, I can imagine that the fatigue can really settle in quickly. So kind of give me your best practices, things that you've seen that could be successful from a way of finding the correct balance in there to keep from flaming out on this.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate it. I think the topic is so important, and I don't think it's talked about enough. I've done a couple live sessions on it. Our most recent episode of Cashing on Change, the podcast that I do with Heather Dunn and Valerie Barkoff, is on managing professional burnout. I think it needs to be an ongoing conversation. I'm not an expert in the area of the field. I'm not certified on the topic, but again, being around so many people over the years, it's a hard job. It's an admirable profession. It absolutely is an admirable profession, but it is hard. And when you think about, if you break it down between your professional responsibilities or professional pressures versus your personal pressures, good night. I mean, it's overwhelming, and anybody would really struggle to try to manage all of that. But what I have found in talking to people, I care about people's well-being, Matt, and just like you, I can see somebody that that is really struggling and is probably, I'll send out a reminder to people, just a little nudge to say, hey, hope you had a great week, but I hope you're making some time for yourself. What do you got going on exciting this weekend or whatever, just to try to encourage them and remind them. But what I found is you have to be intentional about it. You have to take the first step. But the other thing is, it's a lot of times easy to feel like you're on an island by yourself when it comes to that stuff. And the reality is, there are a lot of other providers, for example, that are experiencing a lot of the same challenges that you're experiencing. But when I talk about balancing those things, you've got staffing pressures, you've got reimbursement pressures, you've got issues with denials and whatever on the professional side. You might have an aging parent, you've got kids that are in sports, you've got maybe you're a single parent, you're dealing with a job loss, whatever it might be. You've got all of these things that you're having to manage. You have to decide at the end of the day, what's your why? Who are you really? Are you first and foremost a revenue cycle leader? Or are you first and foremost a mother? Are you first and foremost a Christian? Are you first and foremost a father? Are you first and foremost a caregiver, perhaps to an elderly parent? I mean, you have to decide what it is at the end of the day. You think how many times people's lives have been rocked when something has suddenly happened that was out of the blue, totally unexpected, and they've had to completely shift gears towards something else. Yet at the time, before all that happened, they felt like they were so consumed by a particular project or a particular issue that they couldn't even come up for air. The old saying about going away on vacation, I promise you the job will be waiting for you when you get back. So, force yourself to take vacation. Don't be one of those people that, banks their PTO. It's valuable, man. Even if it's make extended over a long weekend or something, and just say, you know what, today is my day. Or something as simple as, we've heard some people talking about no meeting Fridays. Just simply decide you're not going to meet with your staff after noon on a Friday or on Fridays at all, and just see how that works. And as a leader, so those are some things as an individual, but as a leader, you've got to create a safe space for your staff. You've got to let them know that you support them being healthy first, so that they can be better for others and for those around them. But at the same time, you have to hold each other accountable. You've got to tell people that, hey, we've got an expectation, we've got responsibilities on us. And so as it relates to accountability, I think it's also okay to designate a friend, a colleague as an accountability partner. Somebody that you can go to, who you can check in with from time to time, or who checks in with you and says, slow your roll a little bit. You seem like you're pretty high strung this week. Is everything good? Is there anything we can do? I'm not sure that message was received that you gave to the staff the way you intended it. And, I'm just telling you as a friend that maybe you need to take a beat and catch your breath, and, we can revisit this thing next week or something to that effect. So it's really important. But, a lot of people I guarantee everybody in the room would raise their hand that they know someone who is borderline burned out on their job. And this industry can be all consuming, and you just have to sort of compartmentalize and say, not today. You're in charge of you're ultimately in charge of your life. Don't let the job control you. Happen to the situation. Don't let the situation happen to you.
Well, I think one of the things that I learned in starting Altum, that came from Elizabeth is when she said, making sure that we give ourselves the same amount of grace as that we give to other people. But I know we're right up against time. Last thing I want to leave you with is, Bill, you've carried a large servant's towel for a very long time, and just the way that you lead people, the way you love on people, you've kept a servant's heart the entire time. So we wanted to thank you for the person that you are, the leader that you are inside of this healthcare world. Also wanted to thank everybody for being on today, just and joining us for another episode of the Deep Dive. If you missed any of them, remember that the Deep Dive episodes are on our YouTube channel and on our website. And tune in next month, and we will have another great engaged topic. And Bill, thank you so much. Everybody, enjoy your weekend.
I appreciate it, and best of luck to you and Elizabeth, and continued success for Altum. And we'll see you out there.
All right, thank you.